Hi, so welcome to this new series, which is called On the Other Side. And this time the focus is on plant medicines. And this really just came about because I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were just speaking about how we used to explore with the plants, and then we realized that actually that journey and that chapter came to an end for us, and there are many different reasons as to why. But opening this conversation as well, we noticed how this is quite an uncommon view, basically. So we just wanted to speak about it and share our perspective, and not to cancel or denounce anyone's experience, because I know for me that I learned so much from it, and I'm sure she did as well. And I'm going to speak to her on this series. But first of all, today I'm speaking to a friend of mine called Jason, who has had a similar experience as well. So I'm excited to hear his perspective and what he has to share about it as well. So hope you enjoy this series. But yeah, also just to emphasize, this really isn't a space where I'm trying to denounce the benefits of plant medicines, because I know there are many, but I guess it just comes to a point where we can realize that there's more, and there's something on the other side as well. Hello. How are you doing?
Long time no speak.
I know, been a while, hey?
Long time no see.
Yeah. How are you? What are you up to? Where are you?
Yeah, but I'm in Chester, out near Sheffield. Well,
Yeah.
the coast, Liverpool. Working on my work. How does it? Oh right, yeah. How does it work? Do we just?
We just have a natter.
Yeah. Is this for like the new monks one or?
No, I think this one's I'm gonna do I'm gonna call it the other side.
Okay.
So actually, yeah, let me just go. So I think I might do a series. So this one is going to be the other side of plant medicines, basically. But I would
Yeah.
love to speak you to as well on the new monks, maybe at a later date.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess I was just having a conversation with a friend specifically about ayahuasca, and but plant medicines in general. And both of us have basically come to the stage where we used to explore there, and vision questing and healing through plants. But then we both, I think, similar times anyway. And I have another friend as well who I hope I can speak to on here. Same thing, where we realized that actually it's time to pull the plug.
Mm.
But it's really interesting because I feel like a lot of people who explore with the plants and go down that avenue, it's like that becomes the world, and then that's it. And it's actually very rare for people to step away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah, they put it in as part of a kind of a culture within their life. And
Yeah.
some people may go once a year, I go once a year to drink ayahuasca, and or some people do it when something builds up in their life and then they need to kind
Mm.
of go and freshen up.
Yes.
Then some people are like monthly adventurers, do you know what I mean? And it becomes the whole part of their life.
Yeah.
Uh, I've seen that. And well, they all seem to be positive in their own way, don't they? They all seem to have their pros and cons to it. And then you've got those people that, like perhaps what you're talking about, go out there with great enthusiasm. And then after some time, I can't really articulate maybe why, but I guess we're going to try. You kind of feel a bit like, oh well, that's that then. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to go back there for some reason. Um, I feel like that's where I am. It's definitely crossed my mind here and there to go,
Mm.
well, would I drink it again? But then the answer has always been a bit like, probably not. I've already been down the road, and
Interesting. I mean, I like what you said there. Well, that's that then. I love it. But do you want to give like a little introduction and
yeah,
yeah.
introduction to drinking ayahuasca and
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
also
that.
just a bit about you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, my name's Jason. Oops, can't do it. So my name is Jason Briggs, and I've I drank ayahuasca. I think I drank it 3 times, 3 separate occasions. One was in Milan with a group, and one was in Austria with a proper shaman that had flown over from the Amazon. And then another time I think was more kind of a underground, which was like in the Peak District. But yeah, my background before all that has been in for a long time studying Tibetan Buddhism. From probably around the age of 16, I'd been interested in it after being interested in philosophy in general, reading all these books, not really finding what I was looking for. And then one day stumbled across Tibetan Buddhism and I felt like this was it. This is exactly everything I've been looking for. All the answers have been found, and they have, they have a good way of articulating everything. So I got heavily into that in a way continuously. And I went to university and did philosophy because it seemed like the only degree that I could do that was within that realm of philosophical thinking. And I really enjoyed it, but I think it reinforced my view that the Tibetans know how to take philosophy from the head into the heart, if you know what I mean. So I kept all that up. But my background has been in working in not-for-profits, not-for-profit development. So particularly around fundraising, how do you raise money for big causes? So particularly in the area of prospect development for major gifts. And these are things, big donations, transformative donations of 2 million, above 5 million, sometimes even bigger. So that's the area I've been working in for years, and including consultancy work. But I now also run my own online education platform for specialist knowledge, and that's again for not-for-profits. And I teamed up with a university lecturer to deliver this knowledge. And the idea there is to open up analysis of the business and financial world for not-for-profits so they can better prioritize their relationships. So yeah, that's kind of my broad background.
Sounds very. I love the work that you do. It's so interesting. But, so yeah, we met at the Buddha Center
Yeah.
in London, and yeah. So what do you think at the beginning, the first time that you were drawn to ayahuasca? What it was that was what you were drinking, right?
Yeah. The first time I was drawn to ayahuasca, yeah. What was I thinking?
What was the pull? What drew you in?
Yeah, I think at the time I was taking other stuff, and I felt like I could get quite deep on it, and it felt like it was helping me. All these kind of other substances, if you like, were helping me explore my inner mind, and it felt like there was a lot of stuff there that was kind of bungled up in a way that needed kind of to be forcefully dealt with. And so, yeah, at the time, and I read a lot about plants and stuff, and about a lot about of all different kinds of drugs and how they can be used in therapy and so forth. Including things like magic mushrooms or ketamine and all that kind of style. So I always knew that in my head they all had medicinal qualities where you looked at it one way or another. But for some reason, I never ever heard of ayahuasca, and I still to this day don't quite know why. But then when I came across the word, maybe properly for the first time, I think that was it. It was almost like it resonated, and I wanted to learn a lot more about it. And then I just consumed as many books as I could, videos, documentaries, conversations with people that had done it. I'd built it up into this kind of dead big thing really in my mind. And
Wow.
then I was getting ready to do it. And that's what I did.
That's so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of information at the moment
Yeah,
coming, especially with mushrooms as well, about how the healing properties. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it feels like there's just more and more and more.
Yeah, more than ever, and a lot of good research as well. With stuff like Imperial College London are doing with Dr. David Nutt. It's brilliant stuff. Absolutely, it got to happen. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, so true. So yeah, so what was your experience? So you had the first
yeah,
ceremony.
yeah. So I went to Milan, and I won't name any particular groups, but I went with this group who had rented some kind of nature reserve out in Milan, and in my mind, I don't know how to put this, but I wanted to avoid a situation where I felt like there were people that weren't particularly qualified in delivering ayahuasca, never mind taking it, and I always wanted to go for some what I thought in my head was more authentic. So going out to these shamans that had properly mastered the plant in some other country. But I crossed paths with this group. They did some kind of public talk in Manchester, and I got chatting with them kind of through an email exchange as well as in person. And I said to them, they were like, "Oh, come along, come along, come along to Milan." And I was a bit like, "No, I feel like I wanted my first time to be like,
Yeah.
proper flying to Iquitos, drinking in Peru."
Yeah,
And
same
then their response was, if you feel like that, they basically said it will blow your head off, and you're better off doing it in your own familiar environment first. And I think it was sincere advice. And they were like, so consider coming with us. You're still in the Western kind of culture and so forth. And I think at the time it was actually the right advice.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, I went over, flew over. There was a group of us, and then in a way, it kind of was everything I didn't want it to be. So
Wow.
we arrived in this big nature, kind of, it wasn't big nature, but a big building in the middle of it, and we were all in this one hall. It was literally one hall, and there was about 50 people. And for one, I was like, "What on earth? There's 50 people." I'd read really 12, 24, absolute max, but there was 50, possibly even more. We're all going to be sleeping in this one room, just this one big hall, and we all had these makeshift beds that were put out. It was very unusual and strange, even. And then there was all these different people from all across Europe. Really, had kind of gathered to drink in this one room and sleep in this one room. And it was going to be for about 2 days. Yeah, and I was surprised, and it was kind of everything I didn't want it to be, really. But when I drank it, it turned out to be a really good experience. And yeah, there's a lot to it actually. There's a lot of other connected parts to it. But I drank it, I had a huge amount of like purging and stuff like that. And I remember almost like fighting the experience and looking around the room. And I remember thinking, there were some people dancing as if they were like, away with the fairies, let's call it. And some people had a bit of like side trance on, and some people like rolling around. And I remember it feeling a bit like a madhouse. And my critical mind was going, "Oh, this is terrible," kind of thing. How have you ended up here? And
Yeah.
yeah, and then it was like this kind of other voice kicked in, and it was kind of like suggesting, and who wants to call it whatever, you could call it ayahuasca, but it was kind of suggesting, it was like, "Oh well, you talk about them, well look at you then. You're the one sat here judging. You're the one that's not able to have a good time because you sat judging." And it was actually really subtle, but really, really took me by surprise. And it was like being gently shown a bit of an ugly truth about myself. And then this memory came up of a friend who would come to visit me, and she would come for advice and things quite often. And often I tried to avoid and get out of it. And then they would come and visit, and then I'd be a bit of an agony aunt. And I was also shown at how ugly that was. This person is sincerely wanted to come and see you, and then you present yourself in one way, but actually your thoughts are like this and another. And it was saying things like concentrate on people when you're with them, and in particular in this case, just let go. And then once I let go, I had such a good time. And suddenly all these people I felt strange to suddenly felt dead connected to, and I ended up making really good friends that I've stayed friends with, regularly touching base with, ever since. So it was actually, and that was my first experience of ayahuasca being quite therapeutic, was that insight it gave. Yeah. And then weird stuff happened with my brother on that, because we're twin brothers.
Oh
I
yeah.
can talk about that in a moment. But yeah, so that was my first time. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it was good. I still remember it very clearly to this day. And
Wow.
it was almost like the biggest thing that I did learn through drinking it as well. So yeah,
I like how you described that. It was quite subtle. It's just like ting ting ting, this little voice.
yeah, yeah,
Mm. But it sounds like it was quite clear as well.
yeah. It was. It was. Yeah, it was quite moving actually. Even thinking about it now, it was quite moving. Yeah.
So did that moment help you in after that moment as well? Were you able to implement that, I guess, connection with other people as well?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously you try and sometimes you fail, but Yeah, I remember it frequently. Whenever I feel like I'm being distracted, if someone wants support or whatever, or just wants to talk about something, or whether I feel like I'm being judgmental, normally things like in my head, like the word hippie and stuff like this, and and that there's a kind of yeah, there's a culture out there, isn't there, of people that like kind of drop out of society in a way, and and they
Hmm.
may criticize society, but then don't do anything to help it, and there's that kind of critique in my mind at the time. But actually, people dropping out of society is also a good thing, and it has its own positives and its own qualities and its own purpose and so forth. So yeah, no, I feel like I've definitely put that kind of prejudice to bed.
Amazing. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes it can, that's a really important part is to take it with you into
yeah,
life,
yeah.
which is sometimes missed. Good that
Yeah,
you.
definitely. And it was quite just to finish that story off, it was quite mystical in some ways to my surprise, because the whole thing felt not particularly, it wasn't like deep psychedelic experience or memories, of a very clear kind. It was actually I was quite conscious for the whole thing, but apart from this one time where I was purging, and I really was purging quite strongly, and I thought my rib cage was going to come out my mouth. I didn't know how on earth it was going to fit, but that was what was about to happen. It was that intense. And anyway, my brother, you might have met, but an identical twin. I have an identical twin brother,
Mm.
and as I was getting on the plane back from Milan, I got a text from him, and he said, "Look, I didn't want to tell you whilst you were away, because I didn't want to influence whatever experience you was having, because he knew I was away." And he said, "But on the Saturday night, and I don't know if you drank this night, but I woke up in the middle of the night, panicking, feeling like I needed to throw up, ran to the toilet and was throwing up and was purging. And his girlfriend was with him. She grabbed him, and she said he was like he was gone, and his pupils were all black. And he said he was purging and throwing up into this toilet. And he said he was like getting a beating, like a kind of as he called it, like an ethical appraisal of himself. And my brother's had this with me before as a twin. We've had this kind of stuff happen before. And he texted me that because he didn't want he texted me afterwards because he didn't want to influence, anything that I was going through. And then he asked, "Did you drink on that Saturday night?" And I was like, "Yeah, it so happens that was the night where I drank the most and where I had this biggest experience, in terms of purging and stuff like that." And so I do think he picked up on it. How that works is a totally different question, because he didn't know I was going to drink. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like he actually knew what day I was going to drink and when even. So it was quite that was quite fascinating. And just to connect that up, when I went to Nepal when I was 19, I had quite a tough time there. And there was this one day, and I was young, and I was in the jungle, and I was basically sobbing on my own.
In
And
Nepal.
so
In Nepal.
in Nepal, yeah, yeah. And I was totally on my own. And then I thought, I've been here like for a number of weeks now. It's really hard. I was on a retreat at this like Buddhist monastery, and I was like, I'm going to email my brother. So I had to walk down to the valley because the internet was in internet cafes back then. And then I opened my email. I was like, right, I'm going to email my brother. And then in my inbox was an email from him, and it said, "Yo, Jay, you all right? I had a dream that he was crying in a jungle the other day." It's like, just want to check if you're all right. And I was like, "Yeah, no way. That's literally what happened." And so anyway, I'm only saying that because for some people that might sound a bit bizarre, but I think that's one of those twin things that happens.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard about those twin things that happen.
you have.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that was really interesting to me. That part of it, that was really interesting. And then we actually went to drink together in the end, which is my second experience. Yeah,
So wait, what did you say he said he felt? A beating. What does that mean?
yeah, like an ethical, like he called it like a stern kind of woman, giving him an appraisal of his life, basically.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure he got the brunt. I'm sure he kind of experienced all the proper experience, because for me, the whole thing was quite mellow. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was like my brother was getting the rough end of the deal, and
Yeah.
it
And I
was
guess
strange.
he was like sober as well. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she verified it. She was like, she didn't know what was going on. She just didn't know what was going on. And this was in the middle of the night, you know. She was up with him, helping him into the bathroom and stuff like this, and he
Yes.
didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he thought he'd taken something, and he was worried, and there was something in
Wow.
his food or
That's
that
so
kind of thing.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is fascinating. Yeah,
But I guess, yeah, as twins, you are so connected, so
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it's good. And I showed everyone in the trip, and they were like, "No way." Yeah, it was quite good.
I mean, there are so totally some magical things that happen, and it's just like this is so inexplainable.
Yeah, people use the words, don't they, a lot, synchronicity, don't they, around ayahuasca?
Yeah.
Things suddenly aligning perfectly in a way that feels almost planned. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. So that was the first experience, and then
yeah,
you went back with your brother this time.
yeah. I think this was, I had one more experience drinking the peaks, but there's not really much to say there. Or even, yeah, I didn't really, there wasn't too much going on. The only thing to say there is really that I had someone to make an extremely strong brew, extremely strong. Um, and um, and those people in the room, that one I think had been on heroin for a number of years, trying to get off it, opiates and stuff, and then another one who smoked a lot of cannabis and wasn't really into the idea of spirituality all that much, let's call it. And but they drank two extremely strong cups and didn't feel a single thing, you know. And whereas someone else drank a cup and their mind was unbelievably blown away, you know.
Mm.
And so it's kind of interesting. I think I just wanted to note that because I think sometimes ayahuasca will only work when it wants to work, and I don't know how that even works. Or maybe there's some chemical stuff going on, but they do say that. They do say that unless you're ready, it
Yeah.
can't show you what it wants to show you.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting because there were two quite different people coming from quite different backgrounds that both drank it, and it didn't seem to do anything. Whereas the other people that drank it totally blown away, like what
Mm.
strongest cups, and they drank two of the things. So don't know what was going on there, but that was just a side note.
Yeah.
Then the last time, yeah, the kind of main final time was definitely the most I don't know the word is, epic, if you want to use that word, experience. And we flew out. So my brother was like, you know, I wanted to try and heal some stuff in a way, stuff that had haunted us in our childhood, and we wanted to kind of put stuff to bed. And so yeah, we were like, my brother just like, all right, well, I'll come with you. And he's not even read much about this kind of stuff at the time, especially my twin again. And he was like, no, I'll come with you. And I was like, nice one. So we got a flight. He's like, you're quite brave. You don't even know, you haven't even read much about it. And so we got a flight to, where was it? It was somewhere, it's in Austria, basically. And we went to this centre and they had a proper Maloka and everything. And these guys, I felt much more like, I think their efforts towards it was very sincere, you know, and they were good, learned people about it. And
Mm.
and we went to this Maloka and they organised a shaman to come over from the Amazon, and he was an older man, and he definitely had a weighty energy about him of experience, and he'd been drinking it from the age of 6. You know, he was totally like, you know, you just got that feeling that he was very experienced with it, and that was a whole other ball game. I mean, a whole other ball game, and the ayahuasca icaros that he was doing were unbelievably beautiful. You know, it was like he was controlling everyone, like
The
you'll know,
Icaro.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like turning people up and down like it was, you know, like a radio wave. He was just turning it up and down with his singing. It was really amazing experience, like really, really beautiful at the same time as to being terrifying. But yeah, all kinds of interesting things happened in that one. But one of the most noticeable things was my experience didn't really start till a bit later on because I felt a lot of me and my brother were laying next to each other, you know, and Dom, my brother, was having the kind of, he was getting on with experience, and I felt constantly blocked, you know, and nothing was moving or nothing was really happening, despite, you know, drinking, I guess, strong cups, and the shaman opted to split us apart. You know, he said, I think there's some twin energy going on here again. So it's that kind of theme. And then he split us on the opposite ends of the Maloka. And then it was like a switch then. It was totally, I was
Wow.
totally gone then. And it was like all the stuff that didn't work hit me at once. So that was powerful time. That was 4 days in a row. Yeah.
I mean, it's very rare to work with a shaman who's been doing it since such a young age.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah,
But I know I had a very different experience with the other. I worked with this shaman who'd been doing it for a long time. He was from Mexico,
right.
and it was a whole different, yeah,
It
thing.
is.
It was just
Mm,
like, oh, it was just
yeah,
very powerful.
yeah, yeah. And that's is, but this is where things started to change a bit for me. I mean, I could go into the whole all the this happened and that happened and this vision and all
Yeah,
this, but ultimately it is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
I
And
love that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
but what it showed me actually in quite a terrifying way, because at one point I felt totally in the grip of this being, which so happened to be the shaman, and he had 100% control of me as a, if you like, just a sentient being in the middle of this, wherever I was, right then and there, in the palm of his hand, he had every one of us, and I felt a kind of a sudden sense of distrust, and it wasn't that I was distrusted in per se, more that I suddenly become aware of how foolish and overconfident I'd become, you know. And I was like, I've just put my hands, my whole, if not soul, if you want to call it soul, I call it more consciousness, whatever, and
Yeah.
maybe possibly its entire future in the hands of someone for what? You know, because I think this is really just a bit of a drug. Do you know what I mean? Deep down. And that was it. And I had a real kind of strong battle and to
Wow.
what I thought was for my sanity, if not the safety of my mind and future lives. And that was the kind of battle that I seemed to have. And this represented itself in serpents, and they came and filled the room one after another, to the point where I was blinded and it was suffocating around my neck, in my eyes, in everywhere. Big
Oh,
ones, small ones, worm-sized ones,
what did you
you
say?
know,
Self and serpent.
serpents. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They were
Oh,
inside me. Yeah.
it represented itself as serpent. Sorry, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I gather. Because I remember asking him the next day. I said, why did you fill the room with serpents? And he was like, I didn't fill the room with serpents. And he was like, he's like, I'm just doing my job. And but ayahuasca was giving you a fear situation to deal with,
Wow.
and to learn from. That was his statement. Um, yeah, it's really beautiful. And then on the last day, it was. I think it was almost like he did this as a bit of a celebration. And
Mm.
I've got some recordings of them. His carvals were so stunning, and he was able to paint like around the room this, like these cathedral ceilings,
Yes.
just loads of them. And I think the cathedrals have come from visions. I don't think cathedral architecture is just developed natural. I think people have had visions
I mean,
of heavenly realms,
yes. It
and then
also,
they build them.
I love that. I feel
Yeah.
like they are like sacred geometry.
Yeah, that's right. And it was the whole room covered, just this spire after spire, and in like neon psychedelic colors of your rich purples, pinks, greens, and vivid like electric blues, and it was just created, and everyone could see it. Everyone who drank that day could see it, and then it was like his hours were like painting it, and right at the end he laughed, and he said something like, "Can everyone see that?" And they all went, "Yeah." And he was like, "Good, because I painted you like a canvas." That's what he said, and then everyone burst into laughter at the end, and it was crazy. And then he said quite a few things, but I can't remember at that time whether he just said it in Spanish, because I don't think he knew English, and whether I understood him or not. Like, I don't know whether, I think he only spoke Spanish, and I didn't understand Spanish, but I understood what he said. And I don't know whether that was because of ayahuasca too, which is more about understanding what people, you don't necessarily need to translate or something like that.
Yes, it's the
There's
energy.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. But that just wasn't very clear in my memory. But that was a really remarkable experience. But that feeling of I'd put my hands into someone that I had not vetted properly was what followed me after that. That's what stayed with
Wow.
me. And
Wow.
yeah, and as you know, like before that, I'd been studying Tibetan debate for years and years and years with this monk, and he's one of 5 Western men ever to complete the full Tibetan monastic training uh, and stay a monk, and we connected on, if you like, a love of logic and reason, and I learned that from him every week for years, and I still do to this day. Um, and then I had another teacher, Geshitashi, who you will know,
Yeah.
and I had good connections with them in terms of spiritual development and asking questions about how, sticking points in my life and confidences, fears, whatever, help or study, basically. And, they would give excellent advice. And throughout my life, whenever I've asked for proper advice and I've followed what they've said, my life has always got better and better. But the trust with them is built up over a long period of time. And suddenly here I was, with someone that I don't know, drinking this substance, which actually I think what happened was I realized how powerful it truly was, and that I had been very naive in thinking in a way this is just a plant deep down. Because in our culture, deep down, we may all fight this belief that we're just chemical boxes bouncing around, or something like that. And the plants are just. So yeah, I don't know. It just really opened my mind up. That this was actually quite a serious situation, and that I shouldn't just put myself over to anyone again in the future without proper, if not protection, but reflection on who the person was, what they were doing, why they were doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, I just love what you said. It's so. I mean, I feel like this is one of the things that is so important, and a lot of people do say it's really important who you work with. But
Yeah,
again, like you say, I mean, yeah, you might have known someone for a specific amount of time, but even still, like, how do you know? And I also love how you just said that it made you realize how powerful it was.
yeah,
Because that's another part of it. It's like, but then again, it's like we're putting out, you have to in the way, because the way that it works is like the shaman is holding the space.
yeah,
You, in a way, you have to like surrender, I guess, that, and you have to just allow yourself to trust that person, otherwise you're
yeah,
gonna have not a good experience.
yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. But it's so interesting. And then, yeah, the power, the just recognizing and acknowledging how powerful it is, and then also even with that, just realizing, well, does the shaman even know? Like, obviously they know, but like,
yeah,
there's just so much unknown in it, I find.
yeah. That's it. No, I like the way you put it, and that's what it was. I felt like I was just breaching a wall of another world, and I mean
Mm.
another world that's somehow interwoven with this one, and
Yeah.
in the typical sense, I felt like he was summoning things into the room to do his bidding, and I was like, you read and hear about these things, and it's like, oh, that sounds interesting, isn't it? Or how exotic, or even romantic, But actually, when it starts to happen in front of you, it can be bloody terrifying, and you're like, suddenly you feel like someone's entered the room that he's called on, and needs to do what? They call them like allies, don't they? And they're there to help them heal. But I was like, where are they coming from? Why is this really? That was my biggest thing. I felt like what I felt in the end was, if I let this thing heal me, and the spirit, let's say, behind ayahuasca in the end, if you want to think of it like that, will
Yeah.
I be indebted to it? What kind
Ooh.
of crazy karma am I creating into the future, which I might have to repay?
That's very Buddhist thinking, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but it was,
Love
and
it.
I don't really think of karma like that anyway. I think it's more like a natural cause and
Yes.
effect.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean more like, would my relationship with the world become entangled with it and the world? Uh,
I mean, yeah. Just I feel like these questions are so interesting, and also, yeah, ask the questions. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, I feel like many people aren't asking these questions.
yeah, yeah. Like, what, is this truly a benevolent thing that wants to help us? That's the thing to try and establish.
Yeah.
Or is there something else going on? Or is it not as powerful as it thinks it is? And it's meddling in a way that might ultimately be of disadvantage in the future. I don't know. All these thoughts suddenly started to come in because I realized this was real. And what I was dealing with here was not just
Yes.
eating a bit of whatever kind of substance and feeling something in your room. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
But
Ah,
I did ask for guidance, and I won't mention which particular monk I asked, but they're well known. And I asked, I've read about this plant, ayahuasca, and I want to go and drink it. And these are the reasons why. And I was like, what do you think about it? And he said basically, are you doing it to try and make yourself a better person? I was like, yep. And he said, and something like, I think, and you're not going to hurt any others. And it was like, no. Um, and then he said, well, then how can I say it's a bad thing? And then he said, all he would basically keep in mind is that, what is it? That, as he said, don't take refuge in it, or be careful that you don't see it as kind of the final source of refuge. Like, in other words, that it can ultimately remove suffering. Because their view, the Tibetan Buddhist view, is that the only real thing that ends suffering is realizing emptiness, selflessness, if you like, of the world, and yourself, and that frees suffering. And so to give yourself over to something else in the hope that it will remove your suffering, in the end, that they would say is a pointless task. You know what I mean? It's not ever going to work out like that. So that was his main point was, yeah, if you're bettering yourself with it and it's going to help you do that and heal, grow and become an ethical person, and how can you say it's a bad thing? But just be careful not to take it as the refuge, and I thought that was a really good distinction. Then the other monk that I asked said, almost tersely in a kind of a jokeful way, he said something like, yeah, emptiness is the only true healer, in this world, or something like that. And that's, however you want to digest that, is kind of like, what knowledge paradigm do you exist in?
Yeah.
And, for them, that is, but that's what from my experience of studying all that I really see that as a valid point, and yeah, so that I just thought that was an interesting distinction, and I think that's kind of partly what came through as well in that experience was, yeah, am I accidentally taking refuge or something in this situation and this person in this being, plant, whatever, and I don't really know what's going on. I totally don't really know what's going on at all. Yeah,
Oh, I love that. I feel like, yeah, when I stepped away, I feel like I gained so much clarity. It was
yeah,
mad. It was like this, it was, everything was just a bit confusing, and I feel like nobody really knew. But
right,
I mean, that's just where we are right now.
yeah,
And like you said, with these beings and these things, that the energies that they are calling into the space,
yeah,
there's this huge thing happening at the moment with the fourth dimension, astral realm. And I feel like when I was younger, I used to thought, oh, everything's good, but it just isn't like that. And
yeah,
100%, not every being you contact outside of this reality is benevolent. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
just not how it works.
yeah,
So, but I love what you said about what the uh, teacher
yeah,
did to you. That it's almost like as long as you have the right intention,
yeah,
then it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's it. But don't see it as an ultimate solution,
Yeah,
as with
and
anything.
yeah,
And I was like, yeah,
yeah.
that's a really good distinction. And I think that's also what's kind of grown out of it is there's part of me, in a way, during my final moment with ayahuasca, that I was kind of given the option, which is carry on drinking, and you'll be able to heal this kind of thing, or you can do it through meditation. It just might take
Oh,
longer or something. It was like that, and I think that could be my own reflection on my own experiences as I was coming out of it. But I think what I felt like after that is, because in a way there ain't much higher than ayahuasca. I can't think of anything else. Because when you do psychedelics, you're like, oh wow, that's a whole other realm of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then when you take ayahuasca, like you realize that's even above that place. You know what I mean? And I just think that you can't really, I don't, you can't really get much further than ayahuasca in a way. So I almost felt like I'd done my journey, if you get what I mean, with them, and I've looked through every door, because I felt like I had to, and I came back to the same solution, which is the only real change, that works, that sticks, is inner development, direct inner development. And you might do all these things which eventually get you to a different place, and maybe you get there quicker thanks to these things. Totally the right thing to do, but ultimately the realization is, it's again that whole kind of cheesy idea. It's in your hands, and that's,
ooh,
yeah,
yes.
and that's what I came to in the end. And so I took, in a way, my study a bit more seriously, and I was like, these people that have been these yogis or whatever, they don't need to drink these stuff. And why is that? Could it just be cultural, or are they onto a different thread here? And
Yeah.
to summon it in your own mind through meditation, whatever stuff is, feels far more reliable in some ways as well. And at the end of the day, if I'm passing away, am I, do I drink a cup of ayahuasca or something? Probably not. It's like, I've got my own mind to rely on. So why am I looking
Mm,
external again?
mm,
But I still do use stuff, like here and there for help and so forth. But yeah, I've just totally changed my gears towards it.
mm. Yeah, you mean you still use stuff as in it's not black and white of oh you only need yourself. You know what I mean? Is that what you mean?
Kind of, yeah. But also, I feel like I don't know. In our culture, almost having a change of mind is quite good. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes having a bit of a breather on
Yeah.
stuff is useful, like a refresh or whatever. I mean, I say that more in a way like, yeah, just not that high. I mean, for example, I don't drink alcohol anymore and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
that what I don't want to get across is that I feel like suddenly I look down on all those things. That's
Yes.
not what it is.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I feel like that's the same. I don't want to with this whole series, like that's not the point at all.
yeah,
Rather just to highlight that there is another route. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Because like you say, alcohol, all this is conditioned into us so deeply, you know?
yeah.
And so it's like actually you can live without it, you know?
Yeah, and I think in the end, to be honest, I feel like it is the only route in the end. I mean, I think these substances only show you,
Love that.
what, yeah, they show you what eventually you have to do, and but you still got to do it.
I
And
mean,
they say that all the time, don't they? Even the shamans will say, "Oh, ayahuasca can show you, but you've
yes.
still got to do it." And it's
Well,
like,
this is what I found so interesting what you said in that third experience because you said that yeah, all of a sudden while you were there in the ceremony in the moment it showed you like how much you were like I guess outsourcing, you know?
yeah,
And that I was just like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you know, that it like you said, it actually showed you.
yeah. Yeah, I like that term, outsourcing. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah. Suddenly I paid for a service that I didn't quite know what the hell was going on. Do you know what I mean? And I just felt totally vulnerable. And I remember looking over at my brother, he
Love
was
that.
kind of like rolling around in his ayahuasca dream. And I remember thinking, what have I done? I was like, my brother's
Wow.
here and everything. And it was a proper
Wow.
sobering experience.
Wow.
And I don't know also, whether it comes from a place of distrust as well that I have in a way. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like someone might listen to this and be like, oh, well, he's just got to learn to open his heart and love and this kind of thing. And it's like,
mhm,
yeah, well, maybe. Do you know what I mean? But
mhm.
at the other hand, unless I have got some kind of extra sensory perception or abilities, I still can't vouch for what's going on in a way. But you
Yes,
can't with anyone. But
yes.
well, in Tibetan Buddhism, they have like a kind of if you like, a chapter of its knowledge, which is all about how to trust a teacher.
Oh, wow.
They will call it guru devotion or whatever.
Yes.
But it actually comes up with a list of criteria of the kind of things a teacher should have, and at least, and then how long you should study and observe a teacher, and what you're looking for, and what and that way over time you can feel confident that you can take this teacher as you to use that word again, a refuge or source of refuge. But ultimately, it says the final refuge is yourself. It's your own mind. It's your own cessation of suffering that you have to work towards, and that's the bottom line. Even the Buddha said that.
Yeah.
But you should study a teacher at least. I think it says something like for at least 10 years. So that's a long time in our books. Do you know what I mean? In this Western world of
It is a
instant
long time. Yeah.
reaction, yeah. So
Yeah.
they say that long even. So that's how serious they take making sure you've chosen the right teacher. And they say go to other teachers, see what resonates, even go to different traditions. And
Yeah.
I've always been told that by the teachers that I've had, you know, as they put it, do shop around, go to different even religions, and make sure you find what's the best fit for you. Yeah,
That's very interesting. I feel like it's good to look around because otherwise you're just stuck in one box and you have no idea what else is there. But just to reflect on what you were saying about some people might say that, you know, about your heart needs to open more or something, you know,
yeah,
maybe. I was just thinking, I just feel like right now this transformation that we're going through is it's all about taking back responsibility.
right,
So I feel like
interesting.
yeah, what you said it makes so much sense, you know. That's the whole point. So what you experienced makes so much sense as well within that framework, you know. Hang on a
Yeah.
minute. What's going like why am I yeah, putting myself here when exactly like you said all I need is me.
Yeah, no, I like that term. I've not thought of it quite like that. Responsibility. Like, yeah, in a way, I was putting my own healing in a way to be someone else's responsibility. And do you know what I mean? And then, but then it made me question on who that someone else is at the same time. But yeah, I mean, someone could argue as well. Well, it was ayahuasca that showed you that, and you should be grateful that it suddenly showed you this. It's you to rely on, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is what I find so interesting because I feel like, yeah, it's still, I mean, obviously, again, that's another thing. It's like, it's not black and white. It's not yes and no, do it, don't, Obviously, I learned so much from my ceremonies as well. Like, I gained
Right.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I just feel like it gets to that point where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like there was a few moments in there where it was almost like someone I was communicating with, or things multiple, was a bit like, oh, we could now show you this next bit if you want to, or would you prefer to wait? It was like this kind of back and forth in my head as well. And it was like, yeah, no, I prefer to wait. And it was like stuff like that. It's very hard to explain, but there was definitely a feeling that like if I went back and drank, then it would get deeper and deeper, and there would be almost like some kind of final showdown in my head somehow, somewhere. But yeah, and that was it. But then my fear was, then would I be indebted? Would I have handed over that development, which I should do myself or something?
I mean, the other thing I was thinking about as well is because the question anyway still remains is like, are you, outsourcing in a way? Because ultimately, it's such an internal experience anyway.
Yeah,
This with the ceremony, with the plant, even with the mushrooms, it feels like actually it's you anyway. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. That's it. But these are the kind of things that I didn't really know either. Or all I knew really from that experience was this was extremely powerful. The shaman was extremely powerful. There were suddenly things that I felt, suddenly an awareness that I didn't have before, that was opened by Ayahuasca, where there was things in the room even that I didn't know what they were, and it was suddenly, it just felt also very real. And I wasn't really, yeah, it was like that. Yeah. It's like, how far is that me? Is another question. Are these all just kind of externalizations of your own thoughts? Well, to me, it felt real, very real. And the shaman, I know that's not quite what you mean, but and the shaman felt very powerful as well. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I guess it is. But I mean, it's basically, I feel like there's such a difference, and I feel like this conversation isn't really had much either. The fact that, you can get to that point where it's like,
right.
this is enough. And then also, I feel like, you can reach these states naturally without anything.
Yeah,
This is a whole other conversation. And
yeah,
then it's like, but that's where you're outsourcing because now you're relying on this external thing to get you to, when actually I've heard so many stories of people just through meditation, you
mm,
know? So it's like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're. I think in terms of this, the kind of things you're investigating, I think you're through this kind of series, whatever. I think you're onto something because, yeah, no, because there is a time, isn't there, when it's actually should be quite a positive thing as well. If you feel like you don't need ayahuasca anymore, it should be quite celebratory,
Yes. Oh my word,
And
that's so true.
yeah, and I think that's what you should be picked up on. But the other thing is, people like the circles. They like the people that are involved, and they don't necessarily want to leave that kind of. And you don't have to. It just changes. The relationship just changes.
That's so true. And I love that. I just love what you said there. It's such a good. It's like it should be like that with everything, with stopping smoking, stopping
Yeah,
even drinking alcohol. It's a celebration,
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
But I know what you mean because it is such an amazing experience.
yeah,
There's so much love just
yeah.
in that room that's just like wow.
Yeah. It is. It is like a Disney movie. If someone's not drank it before, then it is as close to being in a Disney movie as you're ever going to get. And so it is like, some part of me misses that kind of the trepidation and the adventure of it. But definitely there's a part of me that's more settled now because I felt like I looked in every door that I had to check
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel way more settled. Good word. I love that as well. That you had to look in all the doors.
Yeah, I know.
The explorer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can, yeah, I just love what you're saying. It's totally resonating.
Yeah. But the final thing I think to add just to it all is through studying debate, what I felt I feel like I realized, and even the monk articulated it once, which was you could do these meditations where it's like calming the mind on the breath and so forth, and that can produce actually quite a lot of bliss. And but ultimately in the end, it's not much different than taking a Valium. You're just kind of calming the mind for a moment. But if you change your view of things, if you change the views that are operating in your mind, it's a lot more enduring. So if you change, I don't know, the way you relate to others, and so you manage to build a new way of thinking that's more compassionate on a daily basis. In other words, you're changing your views, how your concepts operate in the mind, then that's far more long lasting than doing a kind of temporary meditation and thus, in my mind, a temporary drink of a plant. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what I realized. And debate is often overlooked as a spiritual practice. It's seen more as a complementary practice, but it's not. It is like literally you're going into the engine room, and you're restructuring the engine, and then that is like producing a change at the surface level.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what you're describing is like basically the work, and you again,
Yeah,
it's just this thing that keeps coming back. You cannot avoid it. You
yeah,
can do all these different things, but ultimately, it's like such a practical thing that you just have to do, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, I actually like you putting it like I didn't quite articulate in my own head, but yeah, it is. It's the work if you want to put it in that header. Definitely, yeah. And I guess that's what I've just said. My final thing that I came to was what was there all along, really. Um, the pure philosophy is, and yeah, that was the way forward for me in the end. Just doing the practical, actual work. Yeah,
Mm, love it. I mean, I just love that, and also what you described as the snakes like suffocating you. It's just like wow, it just sounds so
yeah,
powerful as well, like
yeah.
and
It was extremely
loud.
intense. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
and
like
it was.
message,
Sorry.
message.
Yeah, no, it was really good. Yeah, I mean, it was a very powerful experience, and there was a lot of people there that had a really powerful time, and then there's some way it didn't. Again, back to that original point I was mentioning, in some it didn't work at all. They were there the whole 4 days, whatever it was, and they were drinking every night, drinking more, and nothing happened. And it's just, if this is all truly a chemical scenario setup, as some people try to argue, I don't necessarily agree, then why does it work for some and not others in that setting? But
Yeah,
yeah, anyway,
yeah, that's a very good point with that. Also, can you just describe, because you mentioned the emptiness, but I feel like the emptiness, the way that it actually is, the meaning of it doesn't really mean like emptiness. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, no, I think there's a bit of a struggle of translation there.
Yeah.
Emptiness, yeah, some people translate to thusness or thatness or suchness, and it's that kind of ineffable experience of the truth. And ultimately, what the Buddha is arguing, and I'm not going to be able to articulate this super well, but is that the reason we suffer is at the center of it all is our sense of I, me, and my suffering, and subjects and objects, self and other, and that's doesn't exist in the way we think it does. It exists, but we over embellish what actually our self is, and from there we suffer. And his argument is to understand the way the self exists. That things don't exist from their own side. We construct the world around us, but we feel like the world is pre-existed, and then we're born into it, and we just interact with it and learn what it is. But we're like, in a way, the creators of the world. And when you realize that, it settles everything down. It's like
Mm.
suddenly all this the fodder from which the negative emotions can burn has gone, and it was never there in the first place. And it should be an extremely joyful and light-hearted experience to know that.
Yes. Yeah. Because sometimes it has this weird, yeah, but I think it's the interpretation that might, like you
Yeah,
said. But so basically, it's like the emptiness where everything comes from. It's like the blank slate.
yeah, you could say that. Yeah, they say the experience of it is in the end is non-conceptual or non-dual, and it feels like water mixing with water, they say.
Wow.
And so some people might say, oh, then you feel like everything's one. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of feeling, I imagine. But I think people leave out sometimes how joyful the experience would be to realize that we're just merely designating the world around us, and it's also unnecessary suffering. I heard the monk say once, it's just so unnecessary, and that idea alone is just incredibly, uh, you know, I don't know, really uplifting, because the idea that something could be unnecessary and we're just causing it upon ourselves is fascinating, isn't it? Really, and
Yeah,
yeah, and it,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. There's loads more to say there, but yeah, but that's what I came to. If you look at the Tibetan Buddhist wheel of life, right in the center, is ignorance, and that's where they say the whole cycle comes from. And they say there's all these other beings, let's go back to the whole kind of spirit realm thing, and even God realm kind of stuff. But ultimately, they're still in the cycle as well. And that was the other thing that I was thinking about. I was like,
Wow, yes.
yeah, even though they might live for a lot longer and they've got extreme powers or whatever, but ultimately they're still in the cycle long term.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of truth in this Tibetan Buddhism, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, we've got a lot of good things to say. Yeah,
So basically, with regards to the plant medicine journeys, earlier you said just to come back to remembering this emptiness. So just sorry, could you just explain a little bit more in regards to, stepping away, how that,
yeah,
yeah, I like what you said about how it should be joyful as well.
yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think it was like going back to what the monk said to me at the time when I was talking about drinking it, and it was basically, the only because he knew I was drinking it to try and reduce suffering and stuff in one's life, as anyone would really.
Okay, okay,
Um,
yeah.
and he said the only true cessation is emptiness. He's like, the only true cessation is emptiness, and it's like that. So that's what it. Suddenly, after doing ayahuasca and going through all that, I saw the importance of the study of emptiness, selflessness, suchness, whatever you want to call it, just suddenly was very, very elevated in my mind, because now I'd tried everything in a way, even looking at other religions or philosophies, let's call it, and the only one that seems to come up again and again as the final answer, the true answer, is this realizing that the self is the self that I thought exists, i.e., Jason and so forth, is not really there, and it never has been. And that would be surely the ultimate realization. That the whole
Mm,
world is like a construct, whatever we mean by that. Yeah.
mm.
So that was it. So when I was kind of coming out of it all, there was like this renewed excitement, really, that this is the answer. I must put more effort into it. Yeah,
Love that. That's so cool. Yeah. I feel like I had a similar thing at the end. I think I was just like, you know what? Life is everything you need. Everything you need to learn, it will be presented to you, you know?
good. Yeah, that's
Life
good.
is the lesson, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's it. So going back to that point, like, it's this whole ending the journey. And it may not even be forever, it's just like it feels like it's done, if you know what I mean, to its own degree.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it's not like walking away in some kind of, oh, didn't get the answers or whatever, miserable. It's totally not. It's the other way.
Yes.
It's joyful, and there's more meaning and direction and clarity. Um, and
Yes.
some could easily argue, well, ayahuasca helped you after all. It's like, yeah, well, I bet it did.
No, exactly. I feel like that is an important part of it. It's like
Yeah,
actually we can still be grateful. We're still grateful for that, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's like anything that happens in our life. When you have to walk away from a relationship, whatever, you can still be grateful for it,
yeah,
even though you know that you need to walk away.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you could be happy with what you learned and the good times and so forth. Yeah, yeah. I still look back at the experiences quite fondly. There's definitely a like kind of a, there's definitely more to it. There's more that I didn't. There's more that I could have experienced with it, I think, definitely. But I just felt
Yeah,
like I just kind of knew, in a way, the trajectory of it all, and yeah, and then ultimately, who really has the final answer? What am I really doing this for? Why am I really doing this? What am I really looking for? and ultimately it's because you want to become a better person and end suffering in any way we can. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a really, really important and powerful thing to say, but it's very Buddhist. Just like, I want to end suffering. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to own that is huge, and
Yeah.
ultimately it is true. That's where all the problems come from, and it's us. We are the ones creating it.
Yeah. Yeah. End suffering or be happy. Do you know what I mean? Like someone would call it like
Yeah.
end suffering, and someone might say, I want to be happy. That's ultimately what we're all on this journey trying to do.
Yeah.
Experience
Totally.
happiness. Yeah. Contentment. Yeah.
Totally. So yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I'm so happy. I feel like, yeah, this is so much juice here from your experience.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah. It's a pleasure. And yeah, there's definitely more to talk
Mm.
about. But yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like this is actually a really good thread to pick up on, and it'd be great to see what other people think about this kind of concept of exiting and so forth. And there's parallels even in the modern world. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, it's kind of a different idea, but yeah, no, yeah, it'd be great to get other people on there and see what they think, and even those people that are reflecting on whether it might be they've had their fill for now or something, and you know what I mean? I'm sure there's people at all different stages. All those people that it'd be good to contrast it with those people that have totally decided this is my life and they go drink every month or every year and they're part of that continued community. It'd be great to know what they think about do they ever foresee themselves not drinking ayahuasca anymore? And if not, why not? And you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
man, that's so true. And also, I'm just wondering, do they ask themselves the questions that you were asking yourself as well?
Yeah, or you. What is it? What did you ask yourself on myself as well?
Mm.
What is it that we were asking ourselves or thinking that led in
Mm.
the end for us to go, oh, I can't think I've done that bit now. Thanks very much. Very grateful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say as well, just as you were bringing it up, some people might say, "Oh, but it helped you anyway," and maybe it's because of you not opening your heart enough or whatever. But at the end of the day, you just have to follow your intuition and your
yeah,
internal guidance, and I feel like that again is going within.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
And with all of it, if that's what you feel like you need to do, then fine.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, keep us updated. It'd be really good to listen to other people's as we
Yeah,
collect more of these up. It'd be really good to hear what other people have been through, and obviously your experience at some point. You should
I know. I was
share
thinking.
that properly. Yeah,
So also, I just wanted to ask you because you brought up that one of the teachers I think said about, oh yeah, when you were talking about emptiness and like ultimately we are the creator. Has your experience of that deepened since walking away from the plants, or what is your experience of that
I
personally?
think over time, after again as well going down the debate angle in a way, and just I was encouraged to spend more time studying rather than necessarily being in formal meditation. And I think like I've tried to keep that up as best I can, even spending, yeah, just proper time with books, proper time and going through them, at a pace and reflecting and stuff. And I think, yeah, has it deepened? I don't know really. I mean, flashes, I think, of just momentary micro milli fraction of a nanosecond or whatever flashes of um yeah, in a way like this would do it, this would end all suffering, or like a kind of a sudden lightness or joyfulness that feels way far beyond anything that has you'd ever felt before in a very natural way.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I think you get little flashes that give you confidence to carry on, because I think it's quite a difficult thing to undo in the end. I
Yeah.
realised, but the interesting thing, and I was even listening to someone this morning about it, is there's another state of mind that they encourage us to develop called bodhicitta, but that's compassionate, to have compassion for all beings. And they say that realizing emptiness is easier than it is to realize a truly compassionate mind. And I was like, that's really interesting. Why on earth is that? And you'd think, oh, it must be nicer. It's just kind of easier just to get on with as a concept. But I must love others more. But it's not. It's to turn that mind around is actually takes a longer period of time and a lot
Mm.
more effort in a way than it does to realize. emptiness or selflessness. And I think my feeling of that is, in a way, if you get the right model in your mind or the right reflection, it can be easier. It can be easy to prove something or disprove something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas compassion is changing almost like a many lifetimes of habits. It's like you're trying to
Mm.
steer this massive, these big ships. You're gently trying to steer it in another direction. When it comes to
Yeah.
compassionate mind and stuff. But I just thought it was interesting. So, yeah, I think if anyone continues to study and reflect and so forth, they always get something from it. And the Dalai Lama, just so you know, said something like, if we're teaching Tibetan Buddhism to Westerners in the modern world, then we should start with emptiness first as a topic. Whereas in traditional Tibet, they started with like suffering first and stuff like that. But they say to study emptiness first, because I think it gives people confidence in what they're trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, because the other side is also very, like you say, it's harder, it takes a long time.
Well, yeah, that as well. Yeah, yeah. And some of it's more like religious, let's call it, isn't it?
Oh,
Some
yeah.
like, rebirth and so forth.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like it's always important to not be attached to anything. You can get what you need out of something, but like, I don't know, I feel like it's important to just have this sense of non-attachment. But I feel like Buddhism, a lot of it is just really foundational things that
yeah,
are so helpful for us. And this thing about compassion is so big, and I mean, it's so obvious. You can just see the way people speak to each other online.
yeah, yeah.
It's just lacking.
Yeah, no. And it's
And
kind
so, no, just to bring it back to the plants as well. I feel like a lot of the time it's like I feel like these things are just foundations. We need the foundations, otherwise we're not going anywhere. Like
yeah,
there's no evolution, there's no growth. Like those, you can't just skip the steps. And
yeah,
sometimes I feel like even with the plants, there might be levels of that happening because although to be honest, it depends whatever person is learning and whether they're integrating and all of that.
yeah,
But ultimately, it's like when you can actually learn this thing about how the suffering starts and how it's actually here, it's you, how you can be compassionate to other people. Like this is huge.
yeah. No, it is, and I think that's the kind of so in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this whole tantric side as well, isn't there, with all the kind of powerful meditations and all the deities and visualizations and all that. And that, in my mind, is very esoteric, and you get visions like an ayahuasca and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of that end of the deal. But they only teach that as a fraction of the overall path, if you know what I mean. But their emphasis always is you've got to get the basics right first. You cannot
Yes.
have a house without the foundation ever,
Exactly.
and
Yes.
um, and you've got to go and start and be more compassionate, understanding, the nature of things through things like emptiness or whatever, or the fact that you're suffering. The Buddha's first teaching was we are suffering, uh,
Yes.
the truth of misery or the truth of sorrow, whatever you want to translate it as. And he says you've got to kind of understand that, or we won't realize the situation we're in, or put effort into undoing it.
Yes.
But he said it's like a hair in the palm of the hand. It's very hard to notice actually true suffering
Yes.
on a big scale. So, but anyway, they emphasize all the foundations. But for me, like the almost like all the tantric stuff, the very esoteric stuff, people get drawn to it and they
Yeah.
say that, then they go for it, but then they have left out the foundations.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that can be true with, like you say, ayahuasca. I think some people run to it because it's got all these bright lights and it is like an adventure, and it really is.
Yeah.
And but then I think maybe that's partly what they realize in the end is, oh, I've just got to get the basics right again. I've got to go back to the beginning. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like I've seen it in so many like communities, groups, teachings, it's like, and it's fascinating. And also like this is the thing about Buddhism, that's the message, you
yeah,
know. That is the message.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Oh. Yeah, that's cool. I don't feel like I have anything else to say.
yeah. Well, it's cool. Yeah, yeah. It's a good nearly hour, about an
Yeah.
hour or so. But yeah,
Yeah. Thank you
but
so much. Thanks for sharing. Really interesting hearing your experience, especially with the Buddhist background.
yeah, no, yeah, and yeah. I hope you get some more people talking about this kind of thing. It might be quite hard to find these people, but I bet they're there. And
Yes.
and it'd be good if you're doing this, maybe it's like starts with your experience, bit
Yeah.
of a monologue or something of how you came to this different space.
Yeah, I might do that actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I feel good
Oh,
for context, you know.
yeah. Yeah, I was wondering whether to do that or just like speak about it when I'm speaking to other people, but maybe I will.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, context.
Yeah.
But actually, this thing about the snakes, when you were experiencing that, were you feeling a lot of fear or not really? Were you just, was the message loud and clear?
I don't. It's a hard one. Like even to this day, I
I'm
was
so
feeling fear.
fascinated.
Yeah, I know. I was feeling. I was feeling like I was being, like there was a curse being descended, and it was like it's like 1 minute, snake comes in, second one, just like just sheep, like kind of filling in until they got like it was in water and like the room was filling up with water, but it was snakes and it was getting so much that it blacked out my vision. And then there was like little ones in my eyes and around then going around my throat. And it was, and yeah, I was almost a bit like, is this, am I actually being cursed really? And am I the only one that can see that we're being cursed here? And, and we've let this person, and, we don't know who this person is. He might have a mission, that Western people are destroying the Amazon jungle. So this is his way to hit back. You just don't know. And it's like, and I mean, and these obviously are slightly on the edge thoughts, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like that's what I went through with it. And but with the answer was the same. Really, was it's true. What are you doing this for? Are you looking for a refuge, a final solution? In which case, do you really think you're going to find it here? And yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a feeling fear. I don't know. I can't explain it. It felt a bit beyond a fear. It was like I was watching it happening. But at the
Mm.
same time, it was really, really spooky. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I feel like obviously the one part is that yeah, it's really important. There is always such an emphasis on who you work with, and it's really important to know that you're in a safe environment and all that. But I just wanted to bring this up because my friend who I've been talking about it, she actually did these videos and it's called the Ayahuasca hijack.
Right.
So yeah, her I think what she's going to speak about a lot. But listen, everything's hijacked here. Whatever. Who cares about that word? But basically, yeah, um
So
there's this understanding at the moment now that basically this what is coming through is a bit distorted in a way.
what do you mean by hijack? Do you mean like that they? Yeah. What do they mean?
Yeah, well, let's see what she says. But I think that it's just that what one time it might have used to be pure, now it isn't. And
Right.
like you were saying, I guess with these entities and these beings that are coming through, they haven't necessarily got our highest intention at heart, which
Maybe not.
again, which is so important why the shaman is able to, you know, keep the space, you know,
Yeah.
clear and clean. So yeah.
And that's it.
But
And
it
even if
sounds
they,
like you might have been tapping into that.
yeah, it could have been, couldn't it? And that's the kind of thoughts I had as well. And then ultimately, it could be, well, even if they have got the best intentions, does it mean that they know what they're doing? Like that point of the Buddha, which was there are all these kind of
Mm.
magical, almost godly beings in the world, but they're still in the cycle. And some even in the Buddhist pantheon, in a way, have a
Yeah.
bit of a delusion, and they think they created the world, and that
Wow.
they've even got like that, and they call it long life gods, and they live for eons and eons and eons and eons, and they've got a lot of abilities. They've got things called gods enjoying the creation of emanation, and they can create worlds and so forth, and blah blah, all these different types. And for us, they would be maybe even the god of classical theism, and Christianity, whatever. But ultimately, although it's an incredibly exalted being and spirits and all these whatever really believe in this stuff, they still, his argument is they're still in a cycle of death and rebirth until they've removed the misconception on self, and that can be very subtle,
Yes.
deep in the mind. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. Because the thing, yeah, and if you haven't like removed that yet, then the intention might be completely different.
Yeah. So I think they could still take you to a good place, at least the place where they are. But it's like, yeah, what's the ultimate goal in the end? Yeah, and that'd be interesting to hear those thoughts on that. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I feel like it's just we open up a whole kettle of fish right now, and like you were saying, the exalted gods, like in the Bible, and that's it's just like this whole thing, and it's just like, what's going on?
Yeah. What's the one thing I can be sure of in the end is my own mind, really. And those people that I've spent a long time with, do you know what I mean? After at some point, then you do have to put your chips down somewhere. Do you get what I mean? I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's just how and when and in what context. And
Mm.
but ultimately, even then, it is going to be down to you in the end. And even the Buddha says that, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that extra bit. So, any final words that you would like to share?
Um, not really. I don't know. I just yeah, I wish I could articulate it better, all of it. And yeah, I just don't feel like I can. It's all very hard to put into words, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for some people they can go into quite a positive space for quite a long period of time, and it'd just be yeah, it'd be just be interested to hear about some of these people through your experiences that might have been doing this for longer as well, and in the ayahuasca circles, it'd be interesting to see where they got to in the end on it all, and yeah, I'd just be really curious to hear what other people's experiences are.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this is what's happening now. And this is why I wanted to do podcasts and stuff, because I just feel like we can learn so much from each other, you know?
Yeah, yeah, no, thanks for doing it. I think you're onto a good 40 and actually think it's going to be really helpful. And there is those people out there that may have drank it for a while and gone, well, I still feel I struggle with this or that and this, and or yeah, and I want to try something different out. And what is that? And yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like we're all on this journey, you know?
yeah,
Figuring it out.
yeah, totally. It's just like a pinball machine, really.
Oh my days, that's such a great
It totally is.
analogy.
There's no real order to anything. We've got a brief moment and we've got to do our best, you know, to get totally.
That's so good. I love it. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Connect soon. Yeah, keep us updated.
Yeah, definitely will do. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode and to this podcast. We hope that you can gain many insights through the art of listening. If you haven't already, we would love it if you can follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if that feels right for you. We've also just launched our first online course, Awakening 101, a ninja's guide to navigating your spiritual awakening, which is led by me and is offered via donation. So if you feel called to that, then please dive in. It's available via our website. Thank you.